this week's session. This is the third session that we're having in the series of the National Inventory Report preparation and the related modalities, procedures, and guidelines, the reporting requirements for the BTR. And so today's session will be looking at the transport sector, which is a subsector of the energy sector, which we did last week. And so this is where we are in the series of sessions that we're doing. So last week we covered the energy industries sector, and today we'll be looking at the subsector on transport, which is one of the most relevant sectors for Suriname. And then the following weeks, this Friday, we'll be looking at the waste sector, and next week on IPPU and AFLU. So just to start, I wanted to show a preview from Suriname's last greenhouse gas inventory in your third national communication published in 2023. And it noted that within the energy sector itself, transport sector was the highest emitter of within the energy sector. So it comprised of 52% within the energy sector alone. And so this is the graphic for the year 2017. So there in gray was all transport sector. And in terms of methodologies, what was used in your last greenhouse gas inventory, it was a complete tier 1 type of methodologies used for all energy sectors, for all energy categories, And within the transport sector, there was data on road transportation, and it had here in the report that this data was obtained from the General Bureau of Statistics. It included domestic aviation, which included data from the domestic flights, airstrips, although noting that this data was difficult to obtain. So we'll take a look at that when we look at the aviation sector. And it also included international aviation, but it noted that all international bunkers were included as a memo item, which is nice and correctly done. So this was for international flights departing and arriving into Suriname. What it didn't include, however, in the transport sector was the marine sector, the waterborne transport. So it was noted that this was not included, as data was not able to be obtained from the several harbors. So this would be an area that would be a good place for improvement for the next inventory. And as usual, please feel free to raise your hand or stop me at any time if you have any questions. Okay, so now we'll take a look at stationary fuel combustion. So we went through some of these principles last week. That particularly in the energy sector, the main source of emission comes from fuel combustion. So the intentional oxidation of materials, whichever of the fossil fuels or biomass fuels within something that is designed to provide heat or mechanical work, and then it produces these greenhouse gases. So in particular, primarily it will produce carbon dioxide. And in terms of the approaches for the IPCC guidance on stationary combustion, this is it's first you collect the fuel consumption data, you use the emission factors, you estimate the emissions for each of the relevant gases, each of the relevant greenhouse gases, and then you add each of them to calculate what is the greenhouse gas total per category. And just these are just some reminders, and so you will have these tables, and you'll also know where to find them in the IPCC guidance. When we're in the energy sector, it's important to remind ourselves and keep these nearby these prefixes and multiplication factors that we often see. So for the thousand, for the tens of thousand, millions, etc., uh, kilo, mega, giga, etc. We can use these when we're multiplying by different factors. So this is just a note for you to keep nearby, and also to show you that you can also find this information in volume 1 of the IPCC guidance. And some other tables. These are units and abbreviations and standard equivalents. Specifically those used in the energy sector. We'll see here kilowatt hour, short ton sometimes is our for the different fuel types for solid fuels, for example, calorie, terajoule, etc., and what they equate to. And the last one, just to show you, is that we have also the IPCC defaults. So when we're looking at the energy sector and then by default the transport sector, we're still working with fuels. In this case, for the transport sector, it's primarily liquid fuels if we're looking at the fuels that are used in Suriname. But as a result, we'll need to know what the calorific content of each of these fuels are. So how much energy they produce. So this is our net calorific value here, the NCV. So this is in terajoules. That's an energy unit. The carbon content that they have, how much kilograms of carbon you have per gigajoule, carbon per energy content, and then your default CO2 emission factors. So how much CO2 gas would amount as a result of a combustion of each of these types of fuels, and how per terajoule for the amount of energy that each of them hold. So as you can see, you have natural gas, you have lower amounts of CO2 being produced as a result of its combustion, and then it increases as the type of fuel becomes heavier or becomes more, and also the more carbon content it has, the more CO2 that it will produce. So the main ones for the transport sector would be motor gasoline, which is gasoline, diesel oil, which is diesel. Well, those would be the main ones. And then, of course, if you have for countries who are using trains and locomotives that are still using coal, for example, that would be other examples. And before we go into how emissions are accounted for in the transport sector, I wanted to just show some of the main principles behind it, because as you go and start calculating your emissions in the transport sector, you'll come across these two terms. So this is NCV and GCV. Have any of the colleagues in the room ever come across these two terms? Maybe in your work or in the last inventory?
I think one is net, one is the gross.
Right. Yes, exactly. So thanks, German. That's exactly that's the main difference. So the technical definition of GCV, so that's gross calorific value, and we saw a preview of what it looked like in 2 slides ago. This is the heating value. So this is the higher heating value within a range, and the gross calorific value is also known as gross energy. And so this is the higher heating value of a fuel is defined as the amount of heat released by a specific quantity at a certain temperature once it's combusted, and then the combustion products have returned to a temperature of about 25 degrees Celsius. So Usually, statistical offices, if they do collect this type of information, would use the gross calorific value of each of these fuels. However, in the IPCC guidelines, uh, you use primarily the NCV, and so there's a way that you can convert your GCV to NCV. Um, and so the main difference between net calorific value and gross calorific value is the latent heat of the vaporization of the water produced during the combustion. So uh, usually your NCV is about 5% less than your GCV. So it has a 5 to 10% impact on your emissions, right? On the amount that you would assume uh, of energy that is produced as a result of combusting these fuels. Yeah, so this is the equation that you'd use to convert it if you have GCV values. If not, within the IPCC guidelines and also within the IPCC software, you can select the NCV values as drop-down default values if you're using that. And if you're not, and if you don't have the GCV values, which is fine. Okay, so we're not doing stationary combustion, but this is just to recap quickly what we did last week on stationary combustion. So we went through energy industries and we went through some of the manufacturing industries and construction. We went through this last week, I believe, on stationary combustion, where you have the different tiers of activity data, where tier one is using the quantity of fuel combusted and default emission factors. Tier two is using the same activity data of the quantity of fuel, but applies country-specific calorific values and or technology-related emission factors. And then tier three is more advanced and goes into specific plant-specific models, which is not relevant in this case. So let's look now at mobile combustion. This is what we'll look at today in the transport sector. So mobile combustion means exactly what you think it means. Mobile, on the go, transport related. And so in terms of the IPCC guidance, these are the main categories that fall under mobile combustion. So road transportation, railways, other transportation, such as those that you have on, um, construction means of transportation or the construction industry, heavy duty equipment, etc. Civil aviation and waterborne navigation. And if you look at it even closer, this is what it looks like. So the main category is 1A3, transport, and it starts with civil aviation, which was done. And then under civil aviation, you put in for your domestic aviation, and then international, which would fall under bunkers. And then for road transportation, which I believe is the was the main contributor of emissions for Suriname, you have cars, and then the more information that you have, you can do it by specific type of cars, passenger cars with three-way catalysts, light duty trucks, etc. I see we have a hand up. Yvette?
Yes, thank you. I think I've already asked this question to somebody from the International Aviation Organization. Um, It's regarding the international aviation, the international bunkers. I know that for Suriname, we also report to the ICAO. So isn't that double, let's see, double reporting, or is there a specific part that we still need to report on the international aviation within our national reporting? That's just a question because you have flights coming in and also going out, and you have different how do you call it, airlines,
Mm-hmm.
and where do you place um the fuel, or the fuel used by these airlines?
Yeah, that's a great question. Also, a very common question. So, um, there are two different reporting mechanisms. So technically, for national greenhouse gas inventories that should be reporting under the UN Climate Change Convention or Paris Agreement, there is a place for you to report on international aviation as a memo item. So meaning that it won't account for your national emissions. It's put as a memo item for informational purposes. It's
Okay.
one of the requirements. However, the main reporting would fall under the requirements and the existing reporting that you do under ICAO. I'm not very familiar with the ICAO reporting, but um, I do know that it covers the international aviation. So those flights that are starting that are originating either in Suriname and going to a different country and vice versa. So I'm not very clear on how it's uh, how it's done under that system, but
Mhm.
under the IPCC guidance and under national inventory reporting, you report it if you have once you have the information as a memo item, and so it will not account and it shouldn't be double counted within what is considered domestic aviation.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think the same goes for maritime as well. So under that reporting mechanism and uh, that is there for the IMO. Good question. Okay. So this is the breakdown of the rest of the categories. It was unclear from Suriname's last greenhouse gas inventory what exactly the categories that were accounted for. I'm not sure if you had the breakdown of cars, like duty trucks, motorcycles, etc., heavy duty trucks and buses. Um, it wasn't uh, it wasn't mentioned explicitly in the report, and I didn't see the actual activity data, but I guess we'll find out soon. Anjali?
Yeah, we have data from the various mobile like cars, trucks, by their weight. So 0 until 1,000 kilo, thousand. So we have it by weight. So you have cars separate, buses separate, trucks separate.
Okay.
So we do have that data, and it's mostly insured cars. So there might be more cars out there, but we have the data of the cars per year that are insured.
Okay.
So that's how we have it.
Okay. And question, Anjali, would it would the cars that are insured and in the different classifications, whether it's car, truck, bus, etc., would you say that all the cars that are insured would be the amount of cars on the road per year, or it might be more?
So it might be a little bit more because some people might drive without insurance, but I don't think it would be that much.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
how do you get that information? So we have official data. The central bank collects that data annually, so we have that. So maybe say like a 1 or 2%. We don't know, but it's not very high.
Okay. Okay, but that's good to know. So it's an assumption that all the vehicles that are registered are those that are on the road from January to December, one calendar year would be
Yes.
the assumption. Okay. Just making a couple notes. Okay. And it's just to bring some attention to, I know you mentioned the weight of the vehicles. In the IPCC guidelines, there are also weight classes for each of these types of vehicles. So cars have a certain range of weight classes, light duty trucks, heavy duty trucks and buses, etc.
We
So
have that too. Like
okay,
for a cars, you have P1, P2, P3, P4, and then you have trucks. But I think only for the cars, they had specifically, at least I think the central bank has more data. Maybe I have to ask for more, but it's what we ask. So I'm sure they must have it by all categories.
okay.
But we do have because you have the small cars, you have the bigger cars, so we do have it. But if I need to ask for more data, then I can do that in the next round of data collection. I mean, a
Okay.
little bit more disaggregated if it's needed.
Okay. Oh, that sounds good. It sounds like this data is filterable. Like you can filter it by weight and you can classify because maybe if this is just a note for inventory compilers, sometimes the government or the insurance has a different weight classification for how they classify vehicles, and you just have to make sure that it fits within the classification that's listed here in the IPCC. They should be generally, if you're using vehicle standards from the US or Europe, etc., they should more or less match. So
I
that
think
shouldn't be a
so.
problem.
Here, the weight you pay the higher your class, the more you pay. So if you're a P1, your insurance will be less than if you're a P2. So I don't know if those categories are the same as you use, but for the financial part, it is measured by a certain weight. But
Okay.
I can always ask for you.
Yeah, sure. And it might be that P1 and P2 fall under cars, and then maybe P3 and others fall under like duty trucks, for example. So it would just be a matter of here we are. Here it is. This is how the IPCC considers
Hmm.
considers the vehicle classes. So
They work with
cars,
persons. We don't do that.
they
We
also
work
have
with,
they also have by weight.
yeah, but
Um,
that's for the trucks. Yeah.
yeah, so you could see heavy duty, light duty, they don't have a big difference. Motorcycles not more than 3 wheels. Cars, so probably most of your cars would be under cars. It would be small cars, sedans, um, like smaller SUVs, and then maybe you have the bigger SUVs would fall under light duty trucks, and then the bigger trucks um, would be heavy duty trucks and buses. They fall under one category. In a few, we can go into the IPCC guidance and double check to see if there are other weight requirements for cars. But yes, they do also have the descriptions by amount number of persons as well. So it it can vary. Yeah, whether it's considered a vehicle, a car, or a light duty vehicle, or a bus, for example, where it could hold more than 12 persons. And as you can see, the IPCC categories also take into consideration whether you have the technology. So, for example, if you have three-way catalysts with or without, this might be filterable dependent on the age of the vehicle. So sometimes the newer the vehicle, the better the technology. So I don't know if you have this information on the uh, the type of catalyst that's on the vehicle as well. But that's something to be considered as well. if you have it. If you don't, then you can put them more on a aggregated level.
Okay, I don't think we have that because I remember that a consultant that was working on transport wanted to know the amount of miles on the car, and we don't have that information too.
Yeah, that's what we'll take a look at next. So that's going into like the tier 2 approach for road transportation. So but before we get there, just wanted to give a few highlights of what generally would be covered under road transportation. So we went through the vehicle classes already, and more or less what the weight classification would be. Uh, so road transportation would cover all fuels sold in a country that's included in the national estimates, even if a vehicle crosses a border or fuel is exported in fuel tanks of vehicles, for example. Um, Biofuels, carbon removed from the total and reported separately. So biofuels, if you have a certain amount of vehicles that run on biofuels, they would be removed from the total. So this is dependent on the type of fuel. I don't know if you have this type of, if you have other types of, if you have biofuels as one of your liquid fuels for vehicles. Also carbon that's emitted from urea-based catalysts. So this is emitted. And so it's included because this is not strictly combustion. And then there's methane and N2O, which are the gases that would result from, dependent on the type of technology that you have. So if you have catalytic converters, if you have newer vehicles that have higher standards for the type of emission control technologies that they have, then you would reduce the amount of non-CO2 emissions. So this is just considerations to have in mind when you're looking at the non-CO2 emissions. So that's the CH4 and the N2O. And just some areas of caution for data that's under fuel sold, especially if you're getting this top-down data. In some cases, for road transport, it overlaps with off-road and potentially other sectors that would be covered under different subsectors, as well as blended fuels, right? Like bioethanol and lubricants. There's a place. There's a place for each of these. Lubricants would be would not be combusted generally, and so um, wouldn't fall under road transportation. And then these biofuels would be reported separately. And also smuggling. So these are just some cautions where it might make it tricky in some cases for knowing the amount of fuel sold, especially if you have some porosity in the borders where fuel might be crossing. Just okay. See, you sent something in the chat. I think this is a good one. Let me just share this on the screen. Okay. So I see here, this is the number of insured motor vehicles from 2019 to 2018 for passenger cars, P1 to P3. And it also shows, oh, these ones don't show the number of persons, but definitely these would all be passenger cars. So that's good. And for buses, between the different, for the different number of persons. So this one isn't by weight, okay? So this would probably fall under trucks and buses. I don't know what the weight is, but it looks probably like it would be heavier than lorries and trucks, right? And then you have your lorries and trucks. Maybe some of these could potentially, some of these be light duty vehicles and some be heavy duty vehicles, like larger trucks, and some are pickup trucks. Do you think
Yes.
that's the
So
case?
some
Yeah.
are pickups and some are used in the gold mining. Some are like really huge, like used for our mining area.
Okay. So
Yeah.
probably some of these may be in the V1. You'd have to just verify with the weight class, weight categorization in the IPCC guidelines, but possibly V1 and V2 would be light duty trucks, right? Maybe even up to V3 to
Mhm.
verify. Some of those might be light duty trucks, and then V4, V5, V6 would definitely be
Just pick one. Yeah.
heavy duty trucks and buses. And then your buses would probably be in your buses category.
Yes.
Okay. And then your motorcycles. Okay, this is good. This is very good data. My question my question would be this
Ja,
data.
ik ben er al.
Hi German, you had you were saying something?
Yes, I was I accidentally closed the session on my computer.
Oh,
Thanks for letting me in again.
yeah, no problem. Okay, I see we have a hand up from Shireen. Go ahead.
That's good. I was just to let you know, allow German in the meeting.
Ah, okay. No problem. I saw him. I got it. Thanks, Shireen. Um, but my question, like my follow-up question I had for you, Anjali, this data that you provided here for number of insured motor vehicles, is this do you have data on how many of these vehicles are gasoline powered, diesel powered, etc.? You have the
I
fuel.
know. I don't. That's why I need to. I've always asked for this, but then I need to. Next year I will do my new data collection, so I will have to ask them if they, if the central bank also collects it, because I think the central bank collects this because the insurance is paid by the type. Like they're not looking about. They're not. If you want to pay for insurance, they're not checking if it's diesel or if it's gasoline. They work with the codes, the P1, P2. So maybe that's why the central bank only concentrates on this part. But we have to, it should be there, but maybe it's not analyzed. So I have to talk to them and ask them if they have it.
Okay.
But we've been collecting this way for many years. Yeah, I didn't know how important it was to also know, if it's diesel or if it's now. I think we have a little bit, just a few hydro electric cars, so we need to start collecting more information. But for now, until last year, this is all we had. So we
Okay.
have to talk with the stakeholders and see if we could get a little bit more desegregation. That
Yeah.
is why I was asking you. I would like to know what exactly you need so I can also ask extra.
Yeah.
extra
Okay.
information.
So let's go into exactly what we need. Let me see if I can zoom this a little bit more. Okay, so this is for road transportation. This is where we start. So this is the decision tree that you can decide what, based on the data that you have, which tier you can use. So the main one is amount of fuel consumed, assumed to be fuel sold. That's very basic. I think you have more information than that. Um, then you can add this country specific carbon content. You might not have that, but that's okay.
I
So
have a
this is
question for Anjali.
sure.
Maybe just for yeah, that may have been that may be of our interest, because I see that the data that you already collected includes the year 2020 until 2023. I think I did saw that, but you can correct me if that's not the case. Where did you get this data? Was it from the
From the
central
central
bank?
bank. Yeah, the central bank provides this data.
So, do you think that it's possible to look if they have more specified data?
That is why I asked I wanted to know what do we need to ask them more. So maybe they have it, but they don't analyze it because it's not important for them. So we need to talk with the central bank. Maybe they have a lot of data. We have to ask them, to try to.
Because we will need that for the
I know,
BTR. So I think it's
you know,
good if we can talk to them.
we should have a meeting with them and see what. I'm sure they have more, but they don't use. They don't maybe not use. They don't use all the disaggregation for themselves because maybe they don't know how important it is yet
Okay.
for the BTR. So we have to talk to them. I'm sure there is more, but they don't take everything from their database. So we need to
Okay.
talk to them for sure.
We will do that.
Yes.
Okay.
And I
Thanks.
have older data until earlier 2000s or something. So if you want older data, I have it.
But then we will have I'm not sure if that will work because we already have data from 2000
Estimated.
to 2017.
Yeah.
So will it, that's a question for Brittany. Will it means that if while we speak to them or while we look at the data that Anjali has, it seems that maybe some of this data wasn't what do you call it? It was not
Complete.
analyzed or used in the greenhouse gas inventories that we already have. Can you change that, or do you need to work with the one that you have already how
Yeah.
do you call it, distributed and shared with the UNFCCC?
Yeah, good question. So definitely you'd be able to use the better data. For example, if you now, if you want to redo the inventory data, or at least for the transport sector or for the road transportation, you can use the data that you have. It's actually encouraged to recalculate if you have better or improved sources of data, and then it would also be more comparable between your own inventory if you use the same data source. So once it's available, even if you're unable to reanalyze from 2000 to 2023, uh, you can at least have the data. You have the data archived to be able to do it at another time, or perhaps if the person that will be doing your energy inventory, they could then decide to uh, recalculate if that's within their ability, or do it at a different time. But if it's easy to request this data, I would recommend that you get all the data that's available, even if you recalculate or not. I would encourage that you recalculate, but yeah, the choice is ultimately yours. That is when you're doing your inventory.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. But based on the data that is being shared here for road transportation, I think the only additional layer of data that would be good to have would be based the type of fuel that's used for each of these vehicles. So if you know that in 2023, we have V3 vehicles, how many of those vehicles are gasoline and diesel and any other fuel? Because then if you have electric vehicles, then you can exclude those from your calculations. And because in this case, when you're entering the data, it's based on the fuel type. So you would have to make an assumption you'd have to make an assumption from this quantity of the quantity of vehicles that you have on the road. You would have to make an assumption that X percentage is gasoline, X percentage is diesel, X percentage is electric or some other fuel type. So if you have the data, it would be better so you don't have to make that assumption. Okay. And then taking it to a different, to a higher level, you can also, if you have this data available, you can also know what, apart from the amount of fuel sold for each fuel type. So for each vehicle type, the fuel that it uses, and if you have also the emission control technology. So if you have a three-way catalyst, if you have information on the year of the vehicle, then you can say that vehicles that are imported or that are in the country that are of a certain age would have assumed to have no three-way catalyst, and everything beyond a certain year would. So that's another. Or if you have an inventory of these technology types. And then taking it to a higher level, so to tier 3, it would be good to know the vehicle kilometers traveled. This is considered a tier 3 methodology, and it's useful to get an understanding of the fuel efficiency, and so fuel efficiency and how it relates to the non-CO2 emissions in particular. So I'm not sure if this is available, but this might be something, if it's in for example, if the insurance company collects how much the mileage of the vehicle at every inspection, then maybe that's something you can consider to add as a new layer of data for your subsequent inventory.
Unfortunately, this is not available because this is not collected by the insurance company, but more by various different mechanics that hoe zeg je keuren in het Engels? Guys.
Okay.
When you have to go and check if everything from your car, I can't come up with a word.
Inspection.
Oh yeah, sorry. That inspection is done by a lot of different companies. So that is not collected by just one institute. But I can always ask, maybe in the future, we have to figure out how we can calculate this. But until last year, this was not available. At least I don't know where to collect this data from. So,
Okay.
but it's something to think about.
Yeah, it's something to think about. But that's good to know. Maybe the data is collected, but it's not maybe reported to the insurance company. Maybe they just get inspection completed, yes, no, right, but not all of the details. Okay.
No, so when you go get your inspection, they write the amount of kilometers on your little card, but I don't know if it's in an Excel sheet somewhere. I don't know if it's like you said, not collected. So
Okay.
I think that to get this information, we maybe also need to show the importance not only to the central bank, but also to all these companies that are collecting the data. So yeah.
Okay. Well, good to know. That could go on the list of improvements for the next cycle. German?
Yes. So one of the problems we have until now, one of the big ones, is that as Anjali is saying, the university is using the disaggregated data, because the institutional arrangement is not set yet, right? So we don't have that because that data is not being asked or compiled yet. For example, for the transport sector, um, one of the main one is fuel consumption. So we don't have the information about which fuel which transport type, maybe a car, a boat, or if we only focus on the small cars, the trucks, it's not disaggregated how much, for example, trucks use or consume, how much small cars use. But in the IPCC software, when you need to calculate or make this calculation, you have to fill this in disaggregated. So if we, is there a method or can we go around it to make some assumptions to fill in the gaps in the data we have? Because, for example, maybe we have how much we have data on how much cars, how much small cars, the picture Anjali just shared. That's what we have. But now we need to know how much these cars individually, the different type, how much they consume, how much combustion take place per car type,
Mm-hmm.
and and is there a way to calculate this? Like maybe make an assumption if we have X% of cars, X% of trucks, and also we have how much fuel is being consumed. Can we then make a educated guess of how much each type of car type consume on maybe the different type of fuel, the
Yeah.
different fuel types. So that's where we stand at this point because we have data on some things, but um, we can't really fill in the gaps or the blank to calculate this in the IPCC software.
Yeah, that's a good point, German. So generally, those assumptions need to be made based on maybe based on some type of fuel study or some type of vehicle study that was done in the country, or maybe someone at the transport department can help make that assumption. So first, I would say yes, you have your data from fuel that's used in the transportation sector. Maybe you have that in your energy balance. We spoke about that last week. The source of how much of fuel that's used, diesel, gasoline, let's just say diesel and gasoline that's used in the transport sector from this amount, then you now have to uh, break it down by percentage for each year. How much of this fuel, how much of the diesel is going towards uh, is going towards passenger vehicles, light duty vehicles, trucks, and then what percentage of the gasoline is going to passenger vehicles, light duty trucks, motorcycles, etc. Probably a fair assumption is that of your motorcycles, that the majority of them are gasoline, right? Probably your heavy duty vehicles and buses, maybe a higher percentage is diesel, and maybe some type of share. I don't know what percentage would be for your passenger vehicles. Um, but it's difficult. It's difficult for me to say that there's no recommended percentage breakdown. This would be expert judgment that the country has to apply, and probably I would say this would be best from someone that's in the transportation sector, maybe the transport ministry, or those who work with the data for these insurance companies. Perhaps they can give a rough percentage of how many vehicles are uh, diesel, gasoline, etc. And then you can make that percentage based on the amount of fuel used for the transportation sector. But unfortunately, I don't have a perfect answer for a perfect share of percentages. Currently, that's not something that I know exists.
Brittany, I think that
Yes.
what's also important is the distance, because an issue in Suriname is that although we are very small, we are like 500,000, less than 600,000 persons. And as you can see, at the amount of cars we have, our public transport is not, it's not as well as other countries. So some people travel from 2, 3 different districts to come to Paramaribo.
Mhm.
So I understand the question from German. To know exactly how much fuel is being used, you also need to know where the person lives, how much that person is driving. Is it an old car? Is it a new car? So there needs to be a specific survey on cars, and it's very hard. It's going to be very hard because not everybody lives who drives in Paramaribo lives in Paramaribo. The distance will play an important role of the amount of fuel you're using. So that's an extra, how you call it, difficulty
Yeah,
difficulty you can estimate.
I
But I
I would
fully understand German.
yeah, I would say just as some advice, right now, definitely Suriname is at a tier one level where the you have the amount of fuel consumed. Maybe you have that from the central bank or you have that from the energy balance, the amount of fuel consumed for the
Yeah,
transport sector. Now you have by vehicle, maybe you don't know how much how much fuel is used for each of the different vehicle types, but maybe there's some that's the expert judgment that you would need to apply. But I would say at this point, I would say maybe focus on that, on finding expert judgment or doing a short study to find what that breakdown would be, to use the existing data that you have, to use this vehicle data that you have. And then in the future, you can work on uh, going into distance traveled. Because once you know how much fuel is consumed, that's enough for right now. Then later on, using distance traveled, that will get you into more a higher tier model. But I think at this point you can go somewhere between tier one and tier two.
Brittany,
German?
we don't have information on amount of fuel consumed, only what's important and produced. That is what German his issue is. What is consumed is what we're missing. What we do have, all the oil that state oil is producing, we have that, and we have from customs data, we have data of the amount of diesel and the amount of gasoline that is imported. So we have the import data, we have what is
Produce.
produced. That's why maybe there is a certain formula you could throw, like if you import, I'm just saying something, 1 million per year, a certain percentage might be used for consumption. I maybe German was trying to ask you if there is a certain method or something, a proxy you can use to make a rough estimates of saying, okay, we import this and roughly this amount will probably be used. We don't have information of the consumption of oil. We have the information. I even tried to collect data. I sent letters to Sol. I sent letters to Roy Budu. They did not reply to my request. I wanted to know how much oil they were selling because that could help, how much you're selling, but we need to work on our awareness maybe. But the import data we have annually because we have that from Asikuda right here at the stats office.
Okay.
So that's, if there is a formula we could use, say 80%. I don't know. German, maybe
Yeah.
that's what you meant, that you wanted to have some kind of
Is that
proxy.
okay? Now I think
Ye-
I understand a little
yes,
better.
Angeli. I wanted to ask you if you know something about that. Because Brittany mentioned the energy balance, right? And in the previous session, she gave us a formula for the calculation of the consumption. So if you know how much is imported, how much is produced, how much is sold, there was a formula in the previous session. But indeed, the issue is we don't know how much is consumed. So the energy balance, we don't know how much is consumed in the transport sector. That's what I was about to ask you, Anjali, if you have an overview of that. Because if you did, then we
Mm.
could indeed look for an expert to get an expert judgment on the vehicle types, how much of the different vehicle types are there in Suriname. And based on that, we could calculate how much each of the types consume. But that's where we stand indeed. We don't have the information on consumption. But if we did, then we could move from there. But I think in the future, we will have to talk to all these companies, the the company selling the fuels, Roy Budu and all the others, because we do need the information. And if we can't get it elsewhere, we need to approach them and they will need to comply. So
Yeah.
we have to see how we will do this in the future.
Maybe we have to use our environmental act, we have to do something with legal on a legal basis, because if we don't have I'm not saying we don't have a strong legal basis, but people will not, if they don't feel that they have to reply, they might not. But I see Ryan has a hand, so maybe Ryan can has something on this.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry that I'm a little bit late. I'm just listening to the conversation. Okay, to calculate how much oil or fuel is being consumed, is it possible that we can use the data regarding the government take that is being paid for every liter that is being sold at
State
at
oil
Roy
company.
Budu
Oh,
at
That's
the
a
oil
good idea.
companies? Because for every liter that you consume, you pay a government take. So in the end, it should be possible to calculate how much has been sold and how much government take has to be paid. So then you can determine how much was consumed for every month. I don't know if that's a possibility.
I think that can help, but still we will have the problem of how much of that consumption went to the transport sector, because it may be the case that some of that consumption went to electricity generation. So it may be diesel for the generators, or I'm not sure, maybe HFO for the generators. But that may help. Your suggestion may help to get closer to the answer. But what do you think, Brittany?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I would like to know how you did it for your last inventory. It wasn't very clear how you use your total fuel and allocated what percentage to the transport sector, and then from transport, road transport, aviation, and maritime. That's not clear to me from the report, but I know that it was done. So I think the first play, one of the first steps would be to ask the persons that worked on your last inventory how they made that assumption. How did they take from total uh, fuel use in the country, and how did they get the breakdown for transport? My suggestion immediately would be to use a proxy one of the uh, from the energy balance that you have available, ones that I showed last week, and then you can use from there. You can make a further assumptions for how much is diesel, how much is gasoline per vehicle type. But I will. I see we have two hands up. We have Anjali, and then we have Ryan, and then Anjali.
I just wanted to have a quick question. Is the energy balance from the International Energy Agency, the one in France? Or
Yes,
is it
that's the
one?
one
Oh,
that's
they
that's
get
the one
they,
that's the one I found last week.
yeah, they get the data from me annually. So I also want to know what they do to calculate, because every year I have to give them data, and they use our data and they have their estimates. So still, if we would use that energy balance, we did not work on it. So I would not know what they did to,
Mhm.
so I'm just wondering, but they use the data from the stats report. So it's probably the limited data that we have, but they have their formulas, I guess,
Yeah,
on estimating. But that was my question. Thanks.
yeah. Yeah, so that's I think they probably do use some type of formula to estimate generally what percentage is for energy. Maybe they use it from previous years where you had data, or some type of regional estimate. I'm not sure, but uh, in the absence of data, if that's the only percentage that is available, for example, the energy balance I think said that transport consumed about 30%, or 30, somewhere between 30 and 40% of total fuel. So then you can then take that 40%, 30, 35%, let's say, of fuel, and then break that down into road transport, et cetera, et cetera. Do we have another hand? Am I missing anyone?
Yeah, I have one suggestion. Okay, for aviation, it should be not that difficult to calculate how much kerosene is being used for aviation because they are the only ones that use that kind of fuel.
Correct. Yeah.
And for energy, for the energy company, I don't think that should be all that difficult also because I think when they purchase their fuel, it is a certain kind of fuel, and we only have one company, so that data should be available.
Mhm. Okay.
Yes, Rai, maybe I can ask you. I'm not sure if you are familiar with, if you are, how much information you have in this area, but we have the EBS, and they are the ones using most of the oil to produce or to generate electricity. But also we have some other small generators the in the country. Maybe I'm not sure if APA has also has their generators, because in the interior, what I understand is that the different villages, some of them they have generators, and these generators are used X amount of hours in the day or in the week. We also have some generators at some plants, maybe Newmont or the Cgen, the gold companies. I'm not sure if the state oil company has their own generator as well. So these small ones are the ones who are lacking. But from EBS, we do have the data from EBS, but the other smaller power generating companies, we don't have the
German,
complete data.
Okay, noted.
German.
Yes.
But another addition, with regard to the interior, I know that the Ministry of Natural Resources, they call it the Department of um, Dienst Elektrificatie.
Yeah.
They also, how do you call it? They also store
Generators.
data and generate data with regard to oil that is
Mhm.
being transported to the interior for um what do you call it?
For the generators.
Yeah, for the energy generator. So that information, I know that from the last inventory, it was also one of the sources of the data that was collected. Um, so you can ask Mr. Emmanuel if I'm correct, if it's that's his name, Dwight. He will be the one to provide you that data because natural resources have that data. And with regard to what Ryan was mentioning with regarding the government take, I know that for the last inventory, the consultant or the expert did make use of that data arising from the government take. So, but I think it will be best, Brittany, to set up a meeting with Ria. Ria was the lead consultant for the greenhouse gas inventory. She will be in the best position to share that information with us. I had already requested her presence in these sessions, but unfortunately, she informed us that her mother passed away last week. So she requested that we give her, let's say, 2 weeks, and after that she will contact us. So once she has done that, we can set up a meeting with her.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
I just wanted to comment. Indeed, the information we can use the information only. there are still gaps. So we can use proxies as Brittany mentioned, but if we have the detailed one, we don't need the proxies. But if we see that we don't have the detailed information, then we will have to use proxies. And the meeting with Mr. Dwight from NHA, Natural Resources, there is a meeting being planned. It was the goal was or the aim was to have the meeting this week, but I didn't hear anything from him. So when I contacted him, he said we will have to postpone it because the stakeholders or the different actors in the energy sector are not available yet. Because we are planning to have a meeting with all the actors, state oil company, the natural resources, EBS, so we can have a talk about the data gathering. So we are waiting on that. So when we have the meeting, we will talk about all these things.
Yeah, that sounds like a solid plan. And I think if you have your all your energy stakeholders together, then they can also advise you as what proxy you can use to get the percentage of fuel used for the transport sector. So just from this conversation, it's saying that if you have some the main fuel importer or producer, the company that you just mentioned, if they have records of their sales and they know that for sure that these sales are going to gas stations, you can assume that of their total, that those would be probably going for road transport. Maybe some percentage of that would be for maritime. And then as our colleague Mr. Ryan here said, that it's for the aviation sector, it becomes easier because it's dependent on the type of fuel, right? So aviation gas and kerosene is only used in the aviation sector, so you can immediately know what percentage is going for aviation, right? But it's good that you will have these conversations soon. Okay. So just to recap before we move on to civil aviation, this is the sources of data from your last inventory. It said here that you got road transportation number of vehicles was gotten from General Bureau of Statistics. I don't think there was disaggregation by fuel type. I added that. But this would be the next step, but not one of the questions that you would pose to your colleagues when you speak to them, whether they have the data or whether you make an assumption, an educated assumption. Domestic aviation, so aviation gasoline, the consumption that was received from civil aviation department. You had here maritime navigation, domestic. This said that this data was not available, but perhaps there might be other data providers that could provide this data.
Ryan, do you have some information for us on this? Ryan, are you still there?
Maybe he went to the restroom or something.
And we can always ask him when he returns. But this might be noting that this was a challenge from your last greenhouse gas inventory to get this information from your ports on international navigation, maritime navigation, but also to differentiate what the domestic maritime fuel consumption is. So that is small vessels and crafts within Suriname, within the borders to different parts. But we can come back to this. Okay. We have two other sections. We have civil aviation and then waterborne navigation. Civil aviation, noting that this data was accessible to Suriname, it should be, I hope, it should be easy to also obtain for this BTR. So this category, civil aviation, includes emissions from all civil commercial use of airplanes, including civil and general aviation. So this means including agricultural airplanes, private jets, helicopters. And domestic means the flight starts and ends in the same country, and international means the flight starts in one country and ends in another. And as I mentioned at the beginning, domestic and international are separated. Domestic falls under the total emissions, and then international is reported under bunkers as a memo item. Anjali?
No, I didn't know that this this data was also important because we get data from our international airport. I put it in a chat by number of flights because that's all I'm asking, right? So we have that data, but I will ask also not only number of flights, but the amount of gasoline per month or something that they're using. Like you said, this data we could get it very easily, but if I knew, I was also gonna try to collect it. That the importance of the amount of fuel. Just wanted to say that. We don't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was muted. I see the data that you put in the chat on the number of flights. I think that's also very helpful. You can always use that as a proxy to estimate the amount of fuel. But of course, because all emissions in the energy and transportation sector are linked to fuel consumption and fuel combustion, it's always good to have the quantity of fuel. So if the stakeholders have this data, it'd be best to get it directly from them, so you don't have to make these assumptions. But that sounds great. Looks like you may already, this data should be accessible. Just some other principles under civil aviation. So operations of the aircraft are divided into landing and takeoff cycle, which uses about 10% of fuel, and then fuel use for cruising, right? For cruising of the aircraft. And so for aviation gasoline, though country-specific emission factors may be available, generally the landing and takeoff date information is generally not available. So in this case, it would be likely that you'd be using Tier 1 unless you have this landing and takeoff information from your civil aviation department. So this is just the basic choices for Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So Tier 1 is based on the fuel consumed and each default factor. So that's the main is quantity of fuel, and the type of fuel is the main data type for civil aviation. And then Tier 2, it would be based on the number of landing and takeoff cycles and the fuel use. So if you have that, then you can use that. You could probably infer some of this from the flights, the flight information that you received as well. And then you can get into higher tiers, which goes into the specific specific parameters from the aircraft type based on how it moves, etc. So this is that one is quite rare and very specific to the type of aircraft. Excuse me. And here it is. If you can see it, I can zoom a little bit more. So this is the main basic equation for Tier 1, which was done for your last inventory. So fuel consumption times the emission factor, and the gases used mainly for this sector is aviation gasoline and jet kerosene. And then if we're looking at Tier 2, which you might not be using. This is the total emissions is equal to land and takeoff cycle emissions plus cruise emissions. And then this, to get your LTO emissions, you multiply the number of landing and takeoffs by aircraft type times the emission factor for that LTO. And then same for the cruise emissions. Cruise emissions will be total fuel consumption minus whatever your LTO fuel consumption is times the cruise emission factor. Let me zoom a little bit more. And you can find some of these default factors for LTO emission factors in the IPCC software guidelines. Sorry. This is table 3.6.9, and as you can see here, it has it here by aircraft type. So as you can see, it gets very specific. You would need to have this information by aircraft type. So sometimes difficult to obtain, but if you have this information, if it's collected, for example, then you can always plan on making this improvement for your next inventory once it's available. So good to know for data collection for civil aviation, what are all the possible sources? So all of the different airlines, or if you can just get that information from your civil aviation department or directly from your central your central bank, I think is where this information that you sent is from. Monthly aircraft movements. So it seems that this information is collected already by your central bank. So once that includes all operations, all aircraft operations, that should be fine. So from statistical offices, transport ministries, airport records, air traffic control records, air carrier schedules, in the absence of these more aggregated sources. And you can also see if this data is available on domestic data or data from the ICAO, sorry, on the aircraft fleet. But if you already have your national sources, that should be more than sufficient. Okay, any other questions on civil aviation? I know this one is more simple because of the two types of fuels. Okay. So we'll move into the other category under the transport sector, which is waterborne navigation. And so this includes emissions from fuels used to propel waterborne vessels, any type of boat waterborne vessels, including hovercraft and hydrofoils, but excluding fishing vessels. So these go under a different category. So these don't go under mobile transportation. These go under 1A4. So this is for fishing vessels specifically. And then the international domestic split should also be determined on the basis of port departure and port arrival. I see, Angela, you're putting all of the information that's available. That's in and out ships docked by harbor. So this is excellent.
This is from the Maritime Authority. Just the amount of how you call it?
Ships.
Flights. Yeah, amount of
in and out ships docked.
Yeah. Okay. And regarding the fisheries, the only information we have is the amount of boats, but not the amount of trips they go to the ocean. So we just have data of these are the amount of boats that have license, the ones that have a license to do fisheries. But I don't know, it's gonna be hard to collect data of the amount of trips, but yeah, I should ask, maybe there was ever a survey done, but I'm gonna put for you what we have just on at least the amount of fishery boats we have. The official ones, you might have some without license. We can't do anything with those, but go ahead. Sorry
No,
to
that's
disturb.
good. No. This is good. This is the type of discussion. No, that's good. Maybe some areas where you can usually find the number of trips, maybe on um, logbooks. I don't know if there's a co-op or a corporation, a co-op for fishermen, for fishing vessels. Sometimes they have to log their trips or log their catch or something like that. So maybe whoever manages that type of data would be able to have how many trips, uh, are going per vessel. And then additionally for that, it would be good to know how much fuel is used. So which is also challenging if it's already challenging to get for fishing vessels, but for all other vessels. Ryan, you had something? Your mic was off?
Oh, sorry.
No problem. So also noting that this data was in your last inventory was not included. So it would be good to see what's available to be collected for this inventory, and maybe fill in also some of the gaps from the last period of your last inventory in 2023, submitted in 2023. So these are some potential activity data sources: national energy statistics or surveys from the shipping companies, including ferry and freight. I don't know if you all have ferries. I've never been to Suriname, but if you all have ferries that take you to different places within the country, then that would be a good source of data for your domestic journeys. Um, Surveys for individual port and marine authorities or fishing companies. I see here in the chat, you're also including the fisheries department. The catch needs to be reported, so perhaps they have information on number of trips. So they have here a number of catch on the quantity of catch. That's good. But they don't have any on the number of vessels or the number of trips or the quantity of fuel used for those trips and the type of fuel. So it gets a bit challenging, but maybe
Rosini, I don't know if they don't have it. I didn't ask them. So maybe they have it.
okay.
So, but let's hope they have it.
Let's hope they have it. Yeah. So for all of these energy transport sectors, to ask the amount of fuel that's used, if that's registered, and if possible, number of journeys. But primarily, you'd want to get the amount of fuel used and the type of fuel used. And then to get more specific, if they don't have the quantity of fuel, then you can estimate that from the number of trips. If they can give you an approximate of how much fuel is used for each trip, then you can say how much, you can calculate how much fuel is used. Okay. And then one of the other subsectors under this sector here is off-road transportation. So this includes vehicles and mobile machinery used within agriculture, forestry, and industry. So these are separate from, this is separate from mobile combustion in the transport sector. But it's not on road, it is off road. So this includes construction and maintenance, also off-road transportation in the residential and other sectors such as airport ground support equipment, agricultural tractors, chainsaws, forklifts. You don't have snowmobiles, but other types of off-road transportation that isn't used for transporting persons, but used for other purposes. So this is just to note that this is also something that we should be, if the data is available, trying to capture. Maybe there's a similar registration or insurance system that could tell us how many of these vehicles. More than likely, a lot of these vehicles would be using diesel, more than likely. So, but also to know what type of fuel each of these types of off-road vehicles are using. And so the method is the same as road transportation. You just have different emission factors for these off-road vehicles. So they have specific off-road activity data based on agricultural equipment, forklifts, etc. So it just means that it uses the combustion occurs at a different rate, or probably a less efficient rate than in road transportation. I see we have some activity in the chat. All road transportation needs to be insured and certified annually. So this, Mr. Ryan, does this also include off-road transport? Like forklifts, tractors, etc.? Yes, go ahead, Angela.
I'm
I
just
think so. I'm
wondering.
not sure.
No, Ryan, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm not sure for that.
Okay.
I was wondering if the off-road transportation is not, if the data is not available, can we use the import data of the annual import of off-road transportation types as a proxy? Because I know if you have nothing, at least you know how much you're importing. It's just it's a proxy. Because we could get that right here at the stats office. We have the Asikuda information, but I would need to know exactly what type of transportation belongs to off-road.
Mm-hmm.
It's better to have nothing, because I'm not sure all of the off-road is annually insured, because they don't always need to be riding on the road. They might be staying at a company, doing work inside the company. But I'm not sure.
Sure. I'm also not sure, but the proxy, whatever proxy you use, should be what off-road vehicles are being used for the year, and then also knowing more or less how much fuel they're using. That, I believe, would be the more challenging task, because these off-road vehicles, forklifts, etc., are used in various different private and public companies, airports, engineering companies, etc. So this one might be more challenging. But if you can use from import, that's one proxy. It's maybe not the best assumption, because you import it 1 year, but you assume that those will be used for, I don't know, many years after they're imported. But if you can use that as a start, yes, to see how many additionally are imported in a year. Yeah, that's perhaps one of the other questions you can, German and colleagues, you can ask in your meeting next year. Maybe there's a similar system for off-road vehicles. Maybe it's registration, or maybe it's like an inspection or something. Maybe they have to get inspected annually to keep operating safely. So then at least then you would know how many are used each year. Okay, colleagues, we're coming to the very end. I just have one question for you. It should be very easy. When you distinguish between national and international fuel consumption for a sea voyage, you have to allocate fuel based on whether the departure and arrival ports are in the same country or in different countries. True or false? I'll give you a minute to read that again, because it's a long statement. This one is true or false?
I think true.
Okay. Anyone else?
I second it.
Okay,
True.
let's see. Yes, okay. So at least we have one concept. This is one of the fundamental concepts. So the answer is true. Your international and national voyages, whether it's sea, airplane, seeing air or land, need to be separated by international and national. Your national or domestic transport will be covered under your national total emissions and removals, and then your international will fall under international bunkers as a memo item. So it will be reported, but not included in the total. And with that, I'll stop again. If you have any final questions from any of the the four sections that we went through today: road, air, waterborne navigation, and off-road. Chairman?
Yes, so we already have 2 sessions on energy. We had the previous one and this one, but I'm not sure if I missed this. Regarding oil and gas for Suriname, is becoming a important part of our energy sector. I see in the IPCC software there are sections regarding refinery, um, flaring, venting, explorations, all those categories. Um, and we need this, we need data also on this to fill this in to calculate it.
That's right.
So we developed some templates on our own for every sector, including the energy sector, including that what I'm talking about, flaring, venting, and all those categories. So I'm wondering if I can share these templates with you on a later date or at a later stage, and if you would like to take a look at them for us, because we previously had some help from the EPA, but those templates were very, I'm not sure. I myself had trouble to understand them, but the categories were related to the IPCC categories. But if I said when we sent out those templates to the stakeholders could not understand the templates, and I think that was one of the main reasons why we didn't get the response we needed, because the templates were too high level, let's say, or
Okay.
too I can't find a word for that. So I'm trying to
Complex.
dim complex, yeah, trying to dim down the complexity, trying to have some smarter templates to see
Sure.
if we can get more responses in that
Sure.
way. So
Sure.
if you would, yeah, like to take
Yeah.
a look at them.
Sure. So you can definitely share with me the templates that you have. I have also shared some templates maybe a couple weeks ago to you and Shireen, etc. Some example of data collection templates that was developed that were developed by the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute. They might be similar to the US EPA ones, but it has like for each activity a drop down. You can put venting, flaring, etc., and then you can put the unit type. So sometimes I find that when you're asking data from especially private sector, if they don't really know what it is that you're wanting, sometimes it's easier to just ask them by question. So we need to know your production for refining, for oil production. It would be all your production activities. So in volume, barrels, tons, etc. And then the same for venting and flaring. So how much is vented and flared? Whether they have it in an energy unit, sometimes they have it already in terajoules, or sometimes they have it in in cubic meters, for example, for volume if it's gas. But I can definitely take a look at I could definitely take a look at your templates. And maybe we can suggest some questions that you ask them, because they might not fill out your template 100% how you want it, but if they send it to you in the way that they collect data and you then convert it to the unit that you need at a later stage, I think that's also useful once you get the data. Yes, German.
Yes, yes, I think that's definitely something we will have to do because so for instance, the data company, they sent us what they are reporting annually to different I'm not sure, to different organizations. So now we need to translate
Convert.
that, yeah, convert that information into what we need. But I had one more question regarding the energy sector. Um, I'm getting a little lost in the IPCC categorization. We have, for example, for the energy sector, you have oil and gas, you have refinery, you have combustion, and we get with the data we get. I'm not sure how to ask this question. Mm, so sometimes I'm not sure where to use the data if I should put it in combustion, on the combustion, or on the refinery, or on the flaring venting, because some of those categories also have it seems to me like they're overlapping, but I need to study the IPCC guidelines better, I think, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting lost in all those categories. Mm,
Yeah. Yeah, it is indeed tricky, German. So I would say generally when the probably oil and state, if they're doing refining, they're reporting their power generation probably from their standard fuels, primary fuels, sorry,
mm,
separately from their refining activities. Um, so you have to ask them from the information from their power generation, uh, what they're producing, and then separately from their refining facility. And so then from their refining, it would be how much of the crude oil or whatever the primary fuel is they're refining, and then what's the amount that the volume or the amount that they're producing that in the secondary fuels, and then in the refining process, then or if it's for gas for LNG, um, then you can ask them how much is vented, how much is flared, etc. But yeah,
okay,
it's tricky, but we can always
sorry.
do that in a separate session as well.
Okay, okay, because I have some questions, but I don't think it's only. I think it's also the way they compile their data. Sometimes it's not clear of what they use it for. That's why maybe it's also a reason I'm getting lost, maybe. Because sometimes they just say consumables from the refinery or something. So when they say consumables, I'm thinking consumables, they consume it for what exactly? So maybe for combustion, or is it for something else?
Mm,
So that's also a reason, I think, why I'm getting lost. But maybe after this session, if we still can um if we don't have clarity, then maybe we can schedule a separate session on this.
sure. And
Mhm.
it might just be yeah, they're using their language for how they call things, but their consumable for the refinery, I would imagine, would be the fuel that they're taking as a starting point to refine into whatever the product is,
Okay,
secondary fuel.
in that case, well, where would you then put the consumables? It's is it combustion or is it somewhere else?
No, that would be under petroleum refining.
Refining. I
Yeah,
see. So
because
it's
it's not going directly to combustion. It's they're processing it for refining. You have some emissions as a result of refining. Probably some of it is combusted off and vented off, etc. But it's not being used for producing power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
but it would go
I'll
under 1A, 1B under refining.
I see. Okay. So that's one also as well. Okay. Then I'll take a look at it again and maybe also check with the IPCC guidelines on that.
Super. Yeah. Well, great questions. Those are tough questions, but I can see that you're on the way. Anjali?
Just wanted to highlight, I also experienced this problem, is that when you send a questionnaire and the stakeholder does not understand what you want, you just get an answer as, I don't have it, or they just give you what they have. One thing how we have to work, I also have to work on that in the next environment report. We have to work on a metadata sheet. We need to know what are the definition they're using, what are the unit, because the one thing in Suriname, what we're not doing, a lot of data is shared to the statistical office, but I don't even know what they did to calculate. Like I'm sending you the data from the central bank about the vehicles, but do not ask me how they collect it. So also something we have to think about in the future, whenever we collect data, we send them what, like the definition or the calculation method we want, and when they send data for us, they also need to let us know what they do. It's just a general issue that a lot of people are having. At least state oil is giving you data. A lot of stakeholders, when they don't understand, you get nothing. So it's just a general issue that we need to work on, having better data quality. And the metadata is an issue for a lot of companies. Just general.
That's very good advice. And then it will also improve the uncertainty data. So that's also one of the necessary parts of doing the inventory. If you have the metadata, first, yes, to know the definitions of whatever the data is that you're collecting, but also the percentage of uncertainty that's intrinsic to each of the data types. But I totally agree. And so that's why I suggest sometimes with your questionnaire, you ask the questions, we want to understand your refining process. We want, what's the definitions that you use? What is the fuel and what is the primary fuel and the secondary fuels that's produced? What percentage is flared, etc., and the quantities. And please tell us all the units that they use, units and conversions, because sometimes should be standard, but yeah, those are just some tips, and I totally agree with you, Anjali and German, on those. But okay, thank you, colleagues, for your attention once again and your interaction, and also Anjali for sharing all of the data that you did in the chat. I know this will be very resourceful for preparing your BTR. But with that, I'd like to say thank you, and I'll see some of you on Friday for the waste sector. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
Bye
Brittany.
bye.